I've worked with $500 clients and $5,000 photography clients, and let me tell you right now, they are not the same quality of client. One tends to be hard to work with, micromanages you, and questions your result, while the other is almost a breeze to work with, and it's probably not the client that you're thinking of. In this video, we're comparing cheap clients with high-ticket clients. I'm going to convince you to raise your rates and almost exclusively work with very expensive clients. Let's get into it. If this is your first time here, my name is Chris Pieta. I teach creative business and product photography. All right, so $500 versus $5,000 clients. I really want to get into this one. A couple of disclaimers at the start here. The numbers $500 and $5,000 are both clients I've experienced, but your numbers can vary. This can be a $300 client or a $600 client too. The point is that they're low budget. The opposite is also true as well. A $5,000 client is an example of a high ticket client. And yes, I've worked with plenty of these in my day, but I've also worked with $2,000, $4,000, and $10,000 clients that all fall into this high budget category. This video is about comparing low budget clients and high budget clients. At the end, I'll tell you my best strategies for raising your rates and actually landing these high budget clients. All right, so all the way back in 2020, when I was taking on my first clients, I was charging very little for my photography. When I started using my client acquisition system, I was charging about $25 a photo at the start. Soon I raised that to $50, but still, that was a steal for clients looking to get new product photography. I remember this one client I had. Leading up to us working together, there was already a few red flags, but I was just too naive to recognize them. This was one of my early clients, and at that point, I had no idea what difference was between a good client and a bad client. I remember even back then, I had a project minimum because I knew that the effort required for a project, I needed to justify that with some sort of price tag. My minimum back then was $500 a project. So with this particular client, I sent my cold email, we scheduled a sales call, and that seemed to go well. But then after I sent the proposal for $500, they already wanted to get a lower rate. This was the first red flag. $500 clients tend to negotiate hard and for not much money in the grand scheme of things. In this case, I pitched them for a $500 project and they came back asking if I could do it for $300. They were already getting a steal for $500, and for me to discount it $200 meant I would barely make any money after all was said and done. Even back in 2020, I had some sort of negotiation skills, so I told them we could do it for $300, but we'd have to cut out a lot of the assets, and they agreed. Yes, this was under my $500 minimum, but I was desperate for clients. And honestly, getting a client to agree to work with me gave me this incredible high, so I was happy. This leads me to the first negative of working with low budget clients. They will try and negotiate and penny pinch like crazy. You just don't see this with high budget clients as much. With low budget clients, you're already not making that much money. And on top of that, the client will try and get you to lower your already low rate for them. Not good for you and not good for them because a lower budget often leads to worse results. So that was the first red flag. Little did I know that this was going to turn into a nightmare of a project. After they signed the proposal for $300, we had a prep call talking through all the potential shots I was going to do for them. They had very specific creative requirements for me. They wanted a certain setup of their product. They wanted this and that to line up perfectly with their vision. Simply put, they didn't want to give up any of their creative control. I told them I was fine with this because this was honestly the first time I experienced this. Well, I went and shot their product photos. I thought I did a great job. I was super happy with the results, and quite frankly, I thought these photos looked a lot better than a lot of their competition. I sent them the photo proofs and awaited their approvals. The next thing that happened probably won't surprise you, but it surprised me at the time. They came back with a long list of revisions they wanted. The blue background wasn't absolutely perfect. They wanted the packaging at a different angle. They weren't vibing with the props. All of this was actually stuff that we talked about on our prep call. I told them what backdrop I would use and what props I would use based on their strict creative brief, but they weren't happy when they saw the final result. This is the reality of these types of situations. When a low budget client gives you a brief like this, most of the time they won't be happy with the results. Why? Because they aren't the professionals in this situation. You are. And you know what looks good and what doesn't. They don't. By them trying to control every single detail without any real experience in photography, the project is destined to disappoint them from the very beginning. No matter how good you are, you can deliver the best photos possible and they'll be disappointed. This brings me to point number 2. The second negative of working with low budget clients is that they'll try and micromanage every part of the shoot, even though they have no experience doing this thing. This is because you are charging so little, they think you aren't a professional. When you charge a low rate, the client feels like they have to micromanage you because a true professional would charge a lot more. When you charge little, your clients perceive you as cheap, even if you are amazing at what you do. When you charge a lot, Clients trust you and perceive you as a professional, even if the difference between the two shoots is just the price and the final result is the same. When clients pay you more, they'll be more inclined to trust you and love the final photos. Okay, so let's get into the last point of this whole story. I ended up doing a reshoot for this client for free because I didn't include that in my contract. After I did a reshoot, I let them know that the next reshoot would cost them extra. Well, they didn't want to pay for that extra reshoot, so we settled on the photos that they got. When I told them it would cost them more, suddenly they liked the photos. I sent them the assets, invoiced them, and I didn't hear back for a while. Their invoice went past due and I had to follow up with them constantly until that invoice finally got paid. Point number 3, and the third negative of working with low budget clients, is that you're going to have to hunt down these invoices. It's never fun when you don't get paid for all the hard work you did, and you have to follow up until you finally get paid. High budget clients usually pay on time. They have huge marketing budgets, so they're not stingy on their cash. A lot of the time, these high budget clients actually ask me to send the invoice immediately so that they can complete it that same day. They want to be professional to me in paying their invoices on time. Client relationships go both ways, and high-ticket clients understand this. Now, as a disclaimer here, I've worked with incredible $500 low-budget clients as well. They've been some of the best ones to work with. There's a few clients that started their own CPG brands when I started my own photography business, and we've grown together side by side. These are fantastic low-budget clients. There are fantastic low-budget clients out there, but 80% of the time, you'll get the scenario I talked about earlier. If you watched up to this point, I know you're serious about landing clients, and specifically high-ticket clients. Well, good news for you, I have a free training on my website that walks you through exactly what you need to do in order to land these clients. There's over 1,200 students involved. It's completely free. Link for that is down below if you're actually serious about this thing. Check it out for free. There's one last thing I want to mention about these low budget clients. A lot of the time, there's going to be a lack of trust since they don't perceive you as the expert. You might pitch a sports drink brand on your product photography. Let's say your niche is food and beverage product photography. On your website, you've got a niche down portfolio that has all different photos that really encompass a lot of different types of product photography. A lot of the time, for low budget clients, this portfolio isn't enough. They will ask you to see extremely specific portfolio examples because they just don't think you're capable of what you say you are doing. This is because you're charging so little. The sports drink company might ask you to send over an example of a water bottle next to a kitchen sink because that's the specific photo they're looking for. Your portfolio might have plenty of photos of bottles in different environments, but this client just doesn't trust that you can deliver unless they see proof. This is a big downside of working with these low budget clients. So we now know how annoying $500 clients are. How did I start working with those $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 clients? Well, it was not easy. At first, I was scared to charge over $1,000 for a photo shoot. That just seemed like such a high number. $1,000 for a few product photos? Was that even that good? At the time, I didn't really understand the value that my product photography provided brands. One of my photos could make a company tens of thousands of dollars, and I just wasn't aware of that fact. But over time, I got more and more confident in my work and the results that companies saw from my work. I slowly began increasing my rate and I started getting yeses. I noticed that those high budget clients became so easy to work with. They rarely would micromanage me. They always asked me for my creative vision. Sure, they would give me a brief, but I would take over the creative control for the project and produce the best assets possible. And they loved them. And best of all, they paid those invoices right away. I realized that it was just as hard to land a $500 client as it was to land a $5,000 client. So I started going after those $5,000 clients. And yeah, I would say I do get rejected more because of that high rate, but that's just those low budget clients filtering themselves out. I don't want to be working with them anyways, so it's a win-win. Once you get to a point where you have a few clients under your belt and you're no longer desperate to land that next client, the whole thing becomes a lot easier. But that's a hard point to get to, and honestly, you will have to put up with those low budget clients for a bit. But over time, you need to be constantly raising your rate, increasing your value, and communicating your value better to your client. For example, when you start off, you'll probably be pitching yourself as a great photographer that takes beautiful photos. There are tens of thousands of these out there. But as you progress, you'll start pitching yourself as someone who helps companies raise brand awareness and increase sales. This is real ROI that brands can see when you pitch them. And through this, you come off as way more professional and your value goes up. Finally, let's talk about another type of client. We've talked about $500 clients, $5,000 clients. What about $50,000 clients? Yes, these exist. Now, the most I've ever gotten from a client was just under 30 grand over the course of an entire year. That was back in 2022. But there are also $50,000 projects out there. Now, these clients are in a whole new ballgame. I've heard stories from people that work with these, and surprisingly or unsurprisingly, they're actually pretty similar to that $500 client. They're right there in the thick of it with you. They want every detail perfect on these projects because they're spending so much cash. Oftentimes, these are huge corporations, and their accounting departments move slow, and your invoices are going to be net 90 rather than net 30. Now, these are just stories I've heard from others, but these clients are out there. And for that price price tag, I say you put up with them. $50K is a modest yearly salary in a lot of places. Anyways, that's all I have today. Grab that free client training down below. My name is Chris Pieta. I'll see you next week.